This super shoe by Hoka was so hyped that many were calling it a Hypershoe. Meet the Hoka Cielo X1, and this is my full-length shoe review. What's up everyone, I am Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you are here at Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be talking about the Hoka Cielo X1, and I'll get into the details of this here in a second, but before we do that, I do want to mention to those who have been following along already and have watched many of my videos, the review format is changing, so as you notice some of the differences, please let me know in the comments what you like and don't like, because I'm constantly trying to improve these reviews to make them more beneficial for you. And if this is the first time you're watching one of my reviews, welcome. I also welcome the feedback, the comments. I would love to hear what you guys liked, what you guys did not like about this video. And if you did like it, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button below, as it helps me out a lot to be able to do this and continue to grow and review more and more shoes. Now, kicking things off, let's talk about the disclosures and disclaimers around this shoe, then we'll dive into the breakdown itself. I received this shoe not for free, but I actually paid for it with my own dollars. However, I did get a discount through my local running store, Utah Run. I handle some of their social media content, specifically TikTok content, and so I do get a typical employee discount there. That being said, this review is entirely my own thoughts. No one, neither Hoka nor Utah Run, will see this review beforehand, and so yeah. Let's get to it. Let's start off with the intended usage by Hoka of this shoe. So this, like I said, is Hoka's premier super shoe for 2024. A lot of people were talking about this shoe. There was a lot of hype, even though it was under embargo, some pictures leaked. So people knew something big was coming. They didn't exactly know what. For a long time, it was rumored to be the Hoka Rocket X3, but it is actually a whole new model, a whole new line in itself. So the primary usage of the shoe is marathon racing. This is their fastest shoe for the long distance race. Along with being a premier shoe comes a premier price tag. So this shoe comes in at $275 roughly. And so that basically puts it in the upper echelon of pricing, along with shoes like the Alphafly, the New Balance Super Comp Elite, the Saucony Endorphin Elite. And that's exactly where Hoka wanted to position it in the market, so that makes sense. From a spec standpoint, it comes in at 8.7 ounces or 247 grams, which does place it on the heavier side of super shoes. So that's something to keep in mind, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue along with this review. The heel stat comes in at a whopping 46 millimeters with a 39 millimeter forefoot for a 7 millimeter drop across the board, or a heel to toe drop of 7 millimeters. Now, if you are familiar with Hoka, that is actually uncharacteristically high for a Hoka shoe. Most Hokas kind of fall in that 4 to 6 millimeter drop range. So I know it's just a slight difference, but it did show a little bit of a willingness from Hoka to try and innovate maybe outside of their comfort zone, which was pretty cool to see. As far as how this shoe fits, we'll break it down. The heel is a little bit roomy. It's not so roomy that I felt like I was going to get any heel slippage. I didn't need a runner's knot, which, by the way, you can see here, there's not a way to do the runner's knot, which is kind of a knock on some of these woven uppers that, well, again, we'll talk about in the upper itself. But the heel lockdown is secure, though the heel is roomy. Now, from a midfoot standpoint, you have some good lockdown. It is a little bit snug, which for me personally, I actually like that in a racer, because I want the shoe to feel like an extension of my body. So it is snug in the midfoot. If you have a wide foot, it's definitely not a wide fitting shoe. And then the toe box, I would say, is average or normal. That's definitely not a wide toe box, but it's definitely not narrow. So all in all, I would say the shoe fits true to size, at least lengthwise. And I wouldn't categorize it in the narrow fit at all. So if you have wide feet, you may want to consider trying to get a wide version of the size, but I would not try to half size up necessarily, because it does not fit short, and that may leave it flopping around a little bit on your feet somewhat. Moving on to the upper, this is an engineered knit upper. It's probably kind of hard to see on video, but you can see here that it's kind of got like this ribbed mesh pattern. So you've got kind of those plasticky woven material in between. And then you have the cloth or sock-like material that kind of gets woven in with those kind of plasticky fibers to create a very breathable mesh upper. Now, compared to a lot of race uppers, I do think it's going to run a little bit warm. If you think about even kind of within Hoka, the Hoka Rocket X2, the Rocket X2 used kind of this synthetic knit or synthetic weave material, and I felt like these shoes were a lot more breathable, and I felt like that took away some of the weight of the shoe. And then when you compare it to the Cielo X1, it's not that the shoe itself is very hot, but I do worry in the summer if that will keep your feet a little bit warmer than you would like on race day. From a comfort standpoint though, it's very, very comfortable. It's a nice material. It fits the foot really well. The midfoot lockdown of the upper is really, really nice. And I've found that a number of these super shoes in 2024 are a little bit looser fitting uppers, which I don't know if that just adds some more breathability, but for me, I like something a little bit more secure. So if you like that feeling, this is gonna feel pretty nice for you. There are some strategic little cushion points here in the heel, again, to help with that lockdown, and you have an asymmetrical gusseted tongue. So while it's not necessarily like fully gusseted, it is there to keep the tongue in place. And the tongue is just this knit sock-like material, so you don't get a full-on separate tongue. There's really basically no cushioning on it, but I didn't feel like there was any excess lace pressure, so that was nice. From a laces standpoint, I'm not sure what Hoka was trying to do with these laces. They're a little bit annoying. They do kind of help keep the foot locked down, but I feel like for a $275 shoe, we could get some better laces in there. I'm not a fan of this plasticky lace material. They stay locked in the shoe, but they don't necessarily stay securely tied that well. So that's not a deal breaker on a shoe, obviously. You can always switch the laces out, but again, for a premium shoe, you would hope for maybe some premium laces as well. All right, now let's talk about what everyone is probably thinking about and wants to know about, which is the midsole and how that feels underfoot. Material-wise, Hoka is using a dual layer PEBA midsole. So continuing to see PEBA in Hokas, I think, is a huge win. For years, people were begging them to step away from the EVA in their faster shoes. So we do have that, and we have that dual layer this year. There is a carbon fiber plate in the shoe, and it is what they call a winged carbon fiber plate. So you can see that it actually clips up a little bit here on the sides, on both ends, and that supposedly is supposed to help with stability of the shoe. And personally, I do feel like that made a difference. The Hoka Cielo X1, in my mind, is the most stable of all super shoes released in 2024 that I have tried so far. The feel of the PEBA and the winged carbon fiber plate give you a really, really smooth ride, and the shoe has a pretty aggressive rocker, which allows for a really, really nice heel to toe transition or midfoot to toe transition, depending on your foot strike. But as you fatigue, and most runners as they fatigue will kind of start to fall a little bit more back on your heels, the shoe does just a wonderful job of continually propelling you forward. So it has a very smooth, a very soft, it's probably maybe the softest foam of the 2024 foams in super shoes. Probably on par with the New Balance Super Comp Elite, and we'll talk more about that in the comparisons. But as far as kind of that propulsion and that easy ride forward, I don't think there is a shoe this year that kind of matches that feeling in the super shoe category. At the same time, that is kind of the downfall of the Cielo X1. What I mean by that is this shoe, you can really fall asleep in it. You can go easy paces, fast paces, a little bit of everything. It's super versatile, like a super trainer. The shoe reminds me a lot of the New Balance Super Comp Trainer version 1, where yes, you could run fast in it, but it was a little bit heavy, so you probably didn't want to use it on race day, but for long training runs, for the occasional interval session, maybe more of kind of the threshold and tempo style runs, and then even your easy runs, the shoe really, really excels. And that is true for the Cielo X1. So I think that this may end up being kind of the everyman super shoe, where if someone is looking for a shoe that does give them some pop, does give them some propulsion, but they're not looking for something that is really, really aggressive. Maybe it's your first super shoe, you're a little bit nervous about it, then the Hoka Cielo X1 may be the move for you. Overall, it's a phenomenal shoe. I love the feel underfoot. For me though, I do feel like it lacks maybe the top tier pop that comes with kind of the 5K, 10K paces that I often am familiar with feeling in a super shoe itself. And I don't know that that's the midsole and plate's fault so much as the overall weight of the shoe. It just takes away a little bit from the top speed that you might want in a super shoe. Now, the outsole of the shoe is one of my favorite aspects of the Cielo X1. You have this strategic rubber outsole, which is really, really nice, and there are cutouts to try and shed some of the weight, as well as this middle kind of cutout here, which adds a little bit of stability as the foam compresses as you press down. So all in all, having an outsole like this, frankly, probably added some excess weight, but I really like that they did that. They did it in the Rocket X2 as well, which means that the Hoka Cielo X1 does really, really well on varying surfaces. If the roads are a little bit slick because of some rain, you won't have to worry about slipping around, and that is not typical for a super shoe. There are a lot of super shoes that are really fast, but are just not going to be able to handle anything if there's any type of slick terrain or moisture on the ground. From a durability standpoint, you can see there is some light wearing on the shoe, and these only have close to about 50 miles on them. And so, yeah, there's probably some slight concern about the outsole itself, but again, compared to most super shoes nowadays, it's just nice to have kind of a good outsole. It's also another reason, though, why this maybe is better suited for kind of bulk training miles, marathon training miles, threshold runs, just because that outsole is going to really help out. You can go out in the rain, you can go out in kind of different terrain or different weather conditions and not have to worry about your feet. Now, I've already talked a little bit about this, but who is this shoe for? I think this shoe is frankly for everybody, but I don't think everybody will use this shoe the same. For me, I love this shoe for training runs, threshold, tempo, and the marathon long run, or just long run in general, is probably the sweet spot for me because I don't like to use carbon fiber plated shoes for like daily training. If you have stronger feet than me, you've been a runner for longer than I have, then maybe you can kind of tolerate that a little bit more, in which case, yeah, you could use this on daily runs. I do think this shoe will get more miles out of it compared to a lot of the other super shoe counterparts that only maybe get 100 to 150 like really good miles. My guess is this shoe could go far beyond that due to the overall stack height plus the added durability of that outsole. When I say everybody, I do also mean kind of everyone could race in this shoe. For a lot of runners, if it wasn't their A race where they're not looking to be like really, really sleek, where they want to just be comfortable. For me, if I was doing a downhill marathon, this would 100% be my shoe of choice, just having a lot of that extra protection. But I think for kind of the middle of the packers, back of the packers who want a super shoe, want to be comfortable, want a little bit of extra energy return, but maybe aren't quite wanting an aggressive shoe, I think that the Cielo X1 is perfect. All right, let's talk some comparisons. So the first one that we have to make is the Hoka Rocket X2. A couple of really quick differentiators. One, you do have the dual layer PEBA foam in the Rocket X2, like the Cielo X1, but the Cielo X1 has a much more significant stack height. As such, there are a couple of similarities between these shoes that I noticed. One, I thought the Rocket X2 was the most stable of super shoes last year. I think the Hoka Cielo X1 is the most stable of super shoes this year. Both of them have those cutouts kind of in the middle of the outsole, which aids in the stability, and both of them have a rubber outsole, which again made the Rocket X2 a lot more versatile in terms of terrain. Personally, I really like the upper of the Rocket X2. A lot of people said it was maybe a little bit too snug, hard to get on. I found it to be just right, versus the Cielo X1, I would maybe find it to be a little bit hot, maybe not as sleek for a race day shoe. And then the last thing I'll say is the underfoot feel. The Rocket X2 has a lot more pop, but you can't cruise in it quite as well, versus the Cielo X1 is very much a cruiser. You can fall asleep in the shoe, and you do get some speed. It's just not like the top end explosion acceleration that you might feel in a Rocket X2 or like a Nike Vaporfly. Fans of the Hoka Cielo X1 may also be fans of the New Balance Super Comp Elite V4. The SC Elite V4 has a 5mm heel to toe drop and is kind of like, in my mind, almost like a plusher version of the Rocket X2. So I think the Cielo X1 is still going to be kind of that cruiser, while the SC Elite V4 is going to have a little bit more pop, but is still very much a cruiser in terms of super shoes in my mind. It's still not the kind of like the top end pop, but this could be a good training companion to the SC Elite in terms of kind of similar cushioned feels underfoot without kind of a ton of explosiveness, but still some pace kind of assistance, we'll call it. Differences though in fit, the SC Elite V4 does fit significantly wider, and it is a little bit shorter, but not enough to size up in my mind, especially if you have a normal width foot, because then it would just be way too wide. And then when making another comparison, while these two shoes are super different in my mind, I just have to kind of call out some of the differences. So the Cielo X1 is going to be crazy stable compared to the Alphafly 3, but this iteration of the Alphafly has added a lot more stability compared to past models. The other thing is there is a little bit more traction on the Alphafly 3 this year. I do think the Cielo X1 has better traction overall still. And lastly, I think that the Alphafly 3 is going to be a lot more aggressive in terms of pop off the ground. So the two sensations that you're going to feel, this one is a little bit more punchy, this one is a little bit more smooth. All right, well that's the Cielo X1. So just some quick final thoughts on the shoe. I actually absolutely love the Cielo X1. I just don't love it for the intended usage. I kind of wish that this was put together as their super trainer option, and they had gone with a little bit sleeker update to the Rocket X3 or X2 to create the Rocket X3, and they would be really good together as training partners. The Cielo X1 though is going to be one of the more versatile, if not the most versatile, super shoes on the market in 2024. It could be the everyman, kind of middle of the pack, back of the pack super shoe of choice. It's the most stable, the most comfortable, the smoothest ride on foot for super shoes in 2024. And I just wish that maybe it came in at more of a super trainer price point, because I think personally that's a little bit of where the shoe kind of falls in terms of feel in the market. So there you go. That is the Hoka Cielo X1. If you've stuck around till the end here, I sure appreciate it. Please don't forget to hit a like and follow. And again, let me know with this new review format what you think. If you prefer this format or my previous format, let me know in the comments. And if you have any feedback, it's welcome. I read every single comment and try to respond to each as well. Thanks everyone.